Veganism. We have become more rapidly aware of this word over the past 10 years. Veganism is defined as the practice of eating only food not derived from animals and typically of avoiding the use of other animal products. There has been evidence found suggesting the existence of vegetarianism as early as 500 BCE, as Greek philosopher and mathematician Pythagoras promoted benevolence among all species and ate what could be described as a vegetarian diet. However, the vegan movement as we know it began when Donald Watson called a meeting in November 1944 with fellow activist Elsie Shringley and 4 other non-dairy vegetarians to discuss non-dairy vegetarian diets and lifestyles. They agreed upon the need for a distinct name for the diet and the movement as a whole, and settled on vegan, the first and last letters taken from the word vegetarianism. It was said by Donald Watson that it was a symbolic name that marked the beginning and end of vegetarianism. Thus, the Vegan Society was founded. This graph shows the increased use of the word vegan over time. As you can see, over the last 10 years, it has increased dramatically, and there are many factors that relate to this, such as the internet and social media.
In social media, there's a group of people called, known as influencers, and a lot of influencers are vegan, and they like to, raise awareness and talk about how veganism isn't just eating plants, and and they show how to make it exciting. So I think that's sort of helping others to also become vegan, and then making them aware that it's not just boring old leaves.
And it's become more prevalent. It's just there are much more vegan products out there. People have suddenly gotten onto this trend, and so you can go to even Aldi or Lidl or wherever else, and you'll find now a range of vegan products. Where 10 years ago you would literally be going and looking for kind of specialist food shops to find some of those complicated vegan products. Now it's just everywhere, and so it makes it much easier for people who are thinking about it to sort of try it, realize that actually there are good substitutes now for things that they were thinking of before. And so you might not have a vegan steak yet. There may not be a good version of that. But actually, if you're eating sausages or burgers or whatever that are processed meats anyway, you can definitely get kind of processed equivalent things that are vegan. And that makes the kind of barrier to switching over to more vegan food or completely vegan food much lower. It's much easier to make that shift.
Climate change has also been another huge factor that has engaged young people in the discourse surrounding veganism.
People have become even more aware of climate change, even more aware of the problems of it. And we were talking about it 10 years ago, we're talking about it even more now. It's sort of always in the news, all of the stuff around COP26 just recently. And some of the effects of it are really being felt. Like you see these things of like fires in Siberia, and you just think, well, what is going on? So when people realize that that's a really big issue, then people are thinking about the different areas of their life in which they might want to be reducing carbon emissions.
These physical consequences that prove the rapid rate of climate change have brought young people to the forefront of this fight against global warming and climate change as a whole.
And I think people like Greta Thunberg is really helping people be inspired, especially younger people or younger activists. And there's more and more of them are becoming vegan.
I read the National Food Strategy, and it had this kind of really cool graph that I thought was interesting that shows you kind of the carbon intensity of your diet. And basically the only way of really reducing the carbon intensity of your diet is to kind of give up meat and milk. And those are just such big kind of contributors to climate change.
We know that veganism has a positive impact on climate change, so we should take that opportunity to make a change. We're fortunate enough to have access to vegan options, whilst some countries, they even struggle to just have food for everyone and just on a daily basis. So I think that we should take that advantage and be thankful for it, being able to have the choices we do.
It's clear from the data how much veganism can impact a positive change to our global warming crisis. However, there are still many polarizing views, and many don't think veganism is the only answer.
I think the kind of polarization that comes around veganism is really that there are some people, food is a really kind of cultural deep thing, right? Like it goes back to what your parents consumed, what they fed you as a kid. People have a really strong preferences over it, and they have a taste for the things they've had. They kind of, nothing tastes as good when you've been out for a whole day as like home cooked food that you really, it's whatever you most remember. And so it's really sort of, I think, it feels bad to have someone tell you that this thing that you love that feels so emotionally connected to is actually wrong, that it's bad. And I guess the kind of thing that can be hard is, you know, none of it is meant to be a criticism of the people or their parents or grandparents or whoever made these things, right? The idea is, as we realize that some things that we didn't realize were bad before are now problematic, we're trying to work out how best to deal with them. But I think some people really react badly to the idea that someone is sanctimoniously coming in and telling them they're not allowed to eat the thing they used to like. And I mean, I think part of the thing is also that there's some people who, when they're vegan, are really like, okay, it's absolutely a terrible thing to do. And I mean, I'm completely vegan, but it's an absolutely terrible thing to kind of consume meat, consume milk. And I think that's sort of, I agree that it's a bad thing to do. But actually, if you could even encourage people to go sort of down that journey and say, well, actually, I just don't need to eat as much meat, I don't have as much milk. Those things can actually kind of help with climate change by people consuming less. And so I think part of it is that there ends up being kind of tribal narrative of like, you're either all the way one way or all the way the other way, when actually what you could do is try and convince people to be somewhere in between at least, and that'll be moving in the right direction.